Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's our Ukrainian talk show, and my name is Sasha Star, and we have guests today, Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show. Great to see
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here.
And we have founder of the network, Nick Poliveda. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Hey, Sasha, you found me.
Yeah, great. And I would like to share with you the news that I think it was in Wall Street Journal that Ukraine will get a limited number of ATACMS missiles from Pentagon, and basically it's all it needs approval of Joe Biden, and as long as he's alive and he can sign something, I think we will get that. So, Jonathan, what do you think?
Well, President Biden is playing the hand he's been dealt, and he sees it He perceives it both in U.S. national interest and as well as in Ukraine's interest to supply him with what he can. Of course, he has to balance that with the U.S. military's own defense requirements, because as you know, we've been depleting our existing stocks, and we have to balance that against the potential for a future conflict or contingency conflict.
Jonathan, when you're talking about the defense of the United States, is it against Canada or Mexico or both?
No, I am not talking about that, Sasha. You know that. And what I'm talking about, what they are concerned about, is the possibility of China moving against Taiwan if we draw down our stocks or our availability to reinforce that conflict too much. So they have to be wary of that. We are certainly not concerned, unless you want to count the illegal immigrant problem as a physical threat, and that's another issue altogether.
ATACMS missiles could be quite useful against right?
Kind of like using a sledgehammer to swat a fly.
But wait, I'm missing something. You are talking about hypothetical attack of China against Taiwan, and here we are talking about the war which is going on now for a year and a half. So how you can compare now? If you will use ATACMS in China-Taiwan conflict, won't you deplete the Pentagon's?
If they choose to use them in that conflict in a defense against the Chinese invasion of Taiwan, that would be a problem. But in any case, what we're looking at right now is the U.S. providing what, in its judgment, it believes it can safely provide or reasonably provide, and be able to recover that production within a reasonable period of time. They have probably already issued guidance to the various defense contractors and suppliers to step up their production, and the defense contractors are doing the best they can with what they have and the time lead they've been given.
So Senate, the House, the Pentagon, all of them decided that it's about time to bring ATACMS to Ukrainians. So do you think that Biden has unique capacities to evaluate the situation better than both Senate and the House and the Pentagon, and therefore to say, you know what, you're all wrong, I'm right, so therefore I'm not going to sign it? Can you see that scenario in reality?
I don't see that happening. Excuse me?
No, I'm asking Nick, what's your opinion?
Well, the thing is, Joe Biden is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces.
Absolutely.
And now the question is, does he have more knowledge than senators and congressmen? And the answer is probably yes, because the thing is, he has access to confidential information that some of them may not have access to.
But wait a second, what about Pentagon? Does he have more information than Pentagon?
Well, no, but the thing is, he listens to the Pentagon. In other words, the thing is, he has to rely on his advisors in the Pentagon in terms of his decision making. Plus, he has his own policy, whatever it might be, because it's not very clear what the policy is of the United States, other than we're not going to let Russia win the war. I mean, we're going to do whatever we can to supply the Ukraine with whatever they need to defend themselves appropriately from the Russian aggression. At least that appears to be the policy. Biden has a hard time articulating what the policy is. Biden has a hard time articulating anything. So unfortunately, we have a commander in chief who's approaching octogenarian status, as opposed to somebody that is a little bit more vibrant than he is. And that's what we're dealing with right now. Unfortunately, Sasha, that's the reality of the situation. Like I said, if it was my deal, I would be sending F-16s, F-35s over. I would kind of overload what Putin could possibly deal with.
Well, so far, I think U.S. policy was very elegant in terms of supplying the weapons to Ukraine. What they were saying is, there's a contact between CIA or Russian intelligence people. They're always in contact. So from time to time, they're asking Russians, okay, are you ready to take it easy and get out of Ukraine? No, we are going to fight. We are going to win. Oh, okay. So we'll supply HIMARS. Yeah, you can supply million HIMARS. We will just destroy all of them in the next 45 minutes. Okay. Here comes HIMARS. And HIMARS really made a huge difference on the battle line. Same thing happened with supplying of tanks. So again, NATO, American asking, okay, guys, are you want to take it back? No, we're going to fight. So we'll supply Leopard, we'll supply Abrams. What about that? Oh, you can supply it, we'll destroy all of these tanks. Well, a few months and the Leopards are coming in. And what's happened is that they're playing a game where Germans, they're first saying we are going to supply Leopards. And then Americans saying, okay, in this case, we will supply also Abrams. Okay, now both Leopards and Abrams are coming anytime now. So same thing happening with ATACMS and F-16s. So again, they're asking Russians, are you going to take it easy and just get back? No, we're going to fight. We're supplying ATACMS. We will supply F-16s. Go ahead, supply. We don't care. Well, that's what's happening right now. In fact, Ukraine is now getting closer and closer to cut the Russian formation on the south in two. It's just as we speak. They are so successfully. And you know what? At first, they were preparing that advance, so ever slowly probing their defenses in several different places. Actually, I heard one Ukrainian program yesterday, and the question was if Bakhmut still is important, or Ukrainians have to take it easy about Bakhmut and just forget about it because there is nothing to fight for. The city has been destroyed completely. But it's still a strategic point in both Russian and Ukrainian defense strategies. And the general who was asked that question, he says, Bakhmut is just important as any other point in this front line. Why? Because Russians have to keep all their defenses ready to deal with the attack. And who knows, if Russians are building and bringing everything to the Zaporozhye front line, then Bakhmut will be left without defenses. And Ukrainians can easily go through Bakhmut. There is Donetsk, Lugansk are very close. Donetsk is already, Ukrainian forces are about 2 kilometers away from Donetsk. 2 kilometers is not such a distance in a war like that. So we are looking at that if Ukrainians could go so far without ATACMS and F-16s. What do you think will happen when ATACMS and F-16s will become available, Jonathan?
My estimate is that the pace and speed of the counteroffensive will increase, and they will become that much more effective. And you all may mention the other weapon systems. Of course, you saw what happened when we started supplying Patriots, which the Russians have, as I pointed out before, have been frightened of since the mid 1980s when they were first deployed. And you saw how the Ukrainians made even more effective use of the Patriot system than we anticipated. It was
right.
more
And these Patriots are much more sophisticated than those in the 80s.
Correct. And they were reasonably effective in Operation Desert Storm in the early 90s, but that was because they had a mission kill capability, capable of knocking a missile off course. They weren't capable of absolutely destroying a missile and preventing it from striking its target. But Raytheon has been spending those intervening decades continually improving the effectiveness of Patriot until, as you saw in the Russian-Ukrainian war, the intercept rate was near 100%, and it fulfilled the nightmare of the Patriot ballistic missile defense system. And that foreshadows, in turn, the potential effectiveness of a global ballistic missile defense system should the U.S. and its NATO allies join together to make one possible.
Yeah, it's about time. You told us first several months ago, if not a year ago, about this possibility, and I think it's a fantastic thing, because Russians are more scared about defensive capacities of NATO and the United States than their attacking capacities, because attacking capacities they can match, not defensive.
They are scared of the defensive capabilities and the potential of U.S. and NATO technology combined. They're scared of the defensive capability because it has the potential to neutralize the one thing that Russia considers makes it a great power, its nuclear missile arsenal. And they foreshadowed that fear back in a book in the late 80s, Inside the KGB by Oleg Gordievsky and Christopher Andrew, where Gordievsky talks about a KGB report that went to Gorbachev in April 1985, predicting that the U.S. SDI system would eventually be able to block 90% of Soviet missiles on first strike, and there was no way that the Soviet Union could keep up with this capability. Now, I ask my students, and I ask you, did we really have the capacity at that point, the SDI research program, to block 90% of Soviet missiles? No, it did not matter. The Russians believed it could. And they acted on that belief, and they spent themselves quite literally into bankruptcy trying to counter an ephemeral and possibly phantom SDI program, which was simply research and development.
But there was a way to deal with SDI systems. If they would build, at that time, what they had probably 10,000 missiles, if they would build 10,000 missiles, so this 90% that they would be neutralized, the other 10% would become 10 times bigger, so it would be still 100%, right? Of course,
as it turned out, the Soviets didn't even have the capacity to build that many missiles.
No,
they simply could not.
Absolutely. So there was a very interesting development. I think it was yesterday when the Ukrainian attack was very successful in destroying several Russian ships right in the Sevastopol, and even one U-boat, which is submarine, which is incredible. And I read some materials that they had a few air fighters that they were flying, and under the left wing there was a Storm Shadow, and under the right wing there was Scalp missiles. So first they would shoot the Storm Shadow missile, and then it would follow with Scalp missiles. And then they used also drones. Actually, the submarine was destroyed by a drone, Ukrainian drone. So there, I must say they're very inventive and very uh, mm, almost artistic in their
It's impressive.
It's very
It's im-
impressive, Frank.
their ability to improvise rivals that of the American army, because the Germans pointed out in World War II is this one reason that the American army is so effectiveness. The American army is so effective is that war is chaos, and the American army practices chaos on a daily basis.
Mhm.
Chaos.
Nick,
Well,
what do you think about this?
yeah, the thing is, see, Ukraine they're fighting for their lives. In other words, they have in other words, you're giving them a reason to fight, which is Russians coming in and basically rape, pillaging, murdering. They showed everything that the Russians do. In other words, frankly, they're a bad group of terrorists. Okay, now let's go look at the Russians. What do they get to gain out of all this? Territory, Putin's ego. I mean, seriously. So the people that are fighting for Russia are fighting for really no reason at all. And they've always said that if you're going to attack a country, you have to have like 3 times the amount of force necessary because you're going into someone else's territory and trying to knock them out. I think it's just a matter of time that they're going to find out they're going to lose the war. Unfortunately, the economic sanctions that we all talked about, oh, that's going to bring Russia and these didn't. And part of it is China, supplying Russia with purchasing oil, India doing the same thing. In other words, they have a lot of countries that basically are supporting Russia. So our economic sanctions weren't working, and I don't think they're going to, because their oil is still being purchased and their economy is still thriving thanks to these other countries. So we're going to have to win on the battlefield. If we're going to do that, we have to supply them with a lot of the U.S. toys, and we have the best toys in the world. We have the best military in the world, and defeat them on the battlefield. And the Ukrainians are more than happy to do it because, frankly, if somebody's going to come into your house and rape you and somebody else is going to give you a gun, you're going to use the gun. And
actually, Nick, you're right. The American toys are by far the best in the world. And there is a lineup on Patriot system. It's 10 years from now on. That's how busy they are to supply, and it just doesn't matter whether it's Ukraine or many other countries who are waiting for Patriot systems. There are simply not enough of them being produced. I think they should build just 5, maybe 10 more factories to supply. So then they would satisfy the demand. Instead of 10 years, they would do it in 2-3 years, and then there would be even more demand. And same thing happened with the larger maybe F-16s, although in US F-16 is somewhat rather outdated plane, right? Mm-hmm. They have now F-35s, and they have much more advanced aircrafts,
right?
F-16s. Yeah. But still,
I just think it's a matter of time when you're going to see Russia's going to capitulate. Because they showed that, I think Dr. Lockwood brought that out during the arms race. They couldn't keep up with the United States, okay, clearly, and so they basically had to fold. And it's going to be the same thing in Ukraine. Ukrainians are determined not to give up their country, and who would? Bring in somebody that's just going to rape, kill, behead you, and all this other stuff. You're going to fight till you die, basically. So they're not going to give up. And Russia has nothing to gain out of this. They have just more to lose. So ultimately, it's just going to be a matter of time. But I also think that strategically, they're looking for a change in leadership in the United States, like Vivek Ramaswamy, who's willing to play the role of Neville Chamberlain and just hand Hitler the keys to the Magic Kingdom. And unfortunately, there's some people out there, Ramaswamy being one of them, big time, who's willing to say, Hitler, come in the United States and rule us too, please.
I heard the program when
I think that Nick is absolutely right on this point, that Russia is banking on gaining a political victory with the U.S. elections next year. They cannot gain it on the battlefield.
Right.
Ukraine realizes that they are in effect in a strategic race against time. So they must they must time their knockout punch against the Russian armed forces. They are coming closer and closer, as you pointed out earlier, to cutting the link between Crimea and Russia, the resupply and reinforcement link. Once that is cut, then Ukraine has a free hand to launch a counteroffensive in the forces against the isolated Russian occupation forces in Crimea, compel their surrender, which would be much easier to do once their supplies and reinforcement are cut off. Once that is done, then on the world stage, it will be quite obvious that Russia has suffered a stunning operational defeat. And this will again give Ukraine a free hand with newer weapon systems to pursue the counteroffensive in other portions of Ukraine, Russian-occupied Ukraine, and just keep the Russians back on their heels. They are slowly but steadily pushing them back, and there is very little, even going nuclear on the part of the Russians. Going nuclear would be similar to a Samson in the temple move. Just let me die with the Philistines. Putin theoretically could pull that. It would be an act of utter insanity. It cannot be ruled out totally, but then again, it would guarantee Russia's own destruction, because the combined nuclear arsenals of the United States and NATO are larger in number and type than those of Russia. Russia may have the single largest nuclear arsenal, but it's not an overwhelming majority. It is technically numerically the largest, but not by much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would like to ask you from a pure political point of view, the Biden's presidency was, let's put it this way, was not brilliant with the exit from Afghanistan, with all his mumbling and now his son investigation or so on. So it's rather weak, to tell you the truth, in my opinion. However, with a decisive victory in Ukraine, Biden could elevate his status to that of Eisenhower and Franklin Roosevelt, and on the highest ever level. And it's so easy to do. Why is he so reluctant to just follow?
Well, the reason he may be reluctant is because your analogy, a victory in the Russian-Ukrainian war would not elevate President Biden to the status of Eisenhower or any other. For one thing, the World War II was a much larger war and had much more commitment and support on the part of the American people. And number two, the most recent example of a president being victorious in a war of any scale was George Bush Sr. in the Persian Gulf War of 1991. Yeah, a very short and very decisive American victory against Iraq. And the problem is, he was victorious, but then James Carville had the ultimate comeback. It's the economy, stupid.
Yeah,
Jonathan, I was thinking about that. You know what was wrong with the Bush Senior's victory in Iraq? It's happened too early in the election style. It happened in 1991, and the election was almost 2 years later. Now, what Bush, in my opinion, is trying to do, he wants Ukrainian to mint the victory sometimes in around summer, maybe even early fall of 2024. So then he would come and shine as, okay, I brought you victory without single loss of American life.
You could say that.
Does it make sense, Nick? What do you think?
But Americans historically have not been willing to re-elect a president or elect a president on the basis solely of military victory in a foreign war. The historical precedents simply do not support that unless you count the American Civil War.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be the economy, and that's going to make a big difference. But I think what Russia's play is a change in leadership in the United States of America. Remember, they interfered with the last election. They're not going to sit back and play nice. They're going to try to, of course, influence this election any way they can, subverse the election. They'll do so. And they want to get a guy like Vivek Ramaswamy in, somebody who would just lay over and kiss Putin's tail and say, yeah, you won the war because I don't know how to fight. And I'm Neville Chamberlain III. So that's their play. But if they don't get this play, Sasha, which is quite possible, they don't win that, then I think Russia's going to fold because they have no, I don't see where they're going to be able to sustain this. And a lot of the at least the regular Russians who live in their country, frankly, probably want nothing to do with this. In other words, this whole battle in Ukraine. Of course, he controls the media, so he feeds them the garbage that they're supposed to hear, how great Putin is. He's going to make Russia great again. The Soviet Union's coming back, all that other stuff. But listen, that garbage only goes so far. And eventually people, even as dumb as those Russians are, they'll start figuring it out. They're going, this is just some guy's ego trip.
But all this propaganda is for internal consumption by Russians, because in the West, their propaganda is very ineffective. They did one effective thing is when they meddled in the election of 2016. In 2020, they were much less effective, and the result speaks for itself. And not sure that they can do in 24. Apparently, the Democrats are very weak. Biden is very weak. And for Republicans to win this election wouldn't be any problem whatsoever if there would be a normal party, forget about that slogan, election was stolen, and just have a normal party with normal people, and they would win by default. Simply because the Biden and the Democrats are just unbearable. But what's happened instead? They're still going with this slogan, the election was stolen. They still have this Donald Trump who is simply, forget about all the legal problems or something. He's just unelectable.
But look how Putin and Xi have been there for years. The U.S. has changed leadership over and over and over again. Who's stable and who's still there? Putin's still there. Who's also stable? Xi is still there. They'll meet and greet American politicians and presidents as they come and go like a revolving door. But Xi and Putin are still there. In other words, they are not going anywhere. So, and that creates a lot of strength for those two particular countries. Our country, unfortunately, we have the revolving door of leadership, and our leadership is horrible, and it creates problems that we see internationally. And some of them that try to get elected, like Vivek Ramaswamy, as Nikki Haley pointed out, you don't have a clue. Why? And if you saw the polls, some people thought he won the debate. And I'm going like, gosh, you guys who are Republicans haven't really listened to this guy very carefully, and you haven't studied history at all. They're what is known as low information voters.
Actually, I love the comment that there's a political commentator in Russian language. He's based in the United States, Mr. Piankovsky, and I've listened to his program in Russian. So he's saying that he was commenting on this first debate, Republican debate. So he says that it was more or less interesting show, and I enjoy it. And then he says, "Isn't something strange creature came up to speak?" And it was like a poor man's Trump situation. And I don't remember his name exactly. He says, was it Vivek Kamasutra or something similar to that? So somebody said, no, it's not Kamasutra, it's Pirasvani. He says, Pirasvani, it's a Georgian name. It was a great Georgian writer with the name Pirasvani. He says, no, it's not Pirasvani, it's not Kamasutra. That's something different. So they couldn't even come up with a name. That's funny. Yeah. And of course, I did follow on Vivek from different sources. One is New York Times, where it was clearly shown he's not a scientist, he's not a businessman, he's a simple crook who put together a company, a public company, which raised $3 billion on a patent that failed 4 times in UK to develop a new drug. He says, no, the 4 times is not enough. So he bought patent for a song, put up an incredibly well-financed company. Valuation went up to $3 billion at one point. So they had 5th trial, which failed miserably. The stock went down in one day 75%, in a month or two down to 0. Many people lost all their money there, of course, or so on. This is type of a businessman who's a sign of what he's doing, very close to what Trump did. But Trump was not as sophisticated as what's his name, Vivek, whatever. And this is a dilemma. So to me, to my taste, the most presidential on this debate was Nikki Haley.
I agree.
You agree, yeah? But I'm not sure.
I thought Nikki Haley would be an extremely good, strong candidate. Everything that she said, her deportment, and she should be the nominee. Okay, and forget all these other people because they're horrible. So that would be it. And this whole thing on Trump is just the guy's a waste of time.
But you know, the recent CNN poll showed that Nikki Haley is the only one who would handily beat Biden one-on-one. 6% advantage. Can you imagine that?
I would actually agree with that. In other words, but the thing is, that's for high information voters. Realize most people are low information voters, and because they're low information voters, and frankly, they have middle school mentality. So they're attracted to people like Trump and Vivek because they're dumb, and those guys attract dumb people. Like to do business with people like themselves. So, as one person pointed out, and most people, I hate to say this, John, half the population of the United States have IQs under 100, and they vote. Okay, so the thing is, Sasha, the middle school mentality works, and so Trump and Vivek both have what I call a middle school mentality, and because of that, they have a good chance of the election because they draw from half the population.
And Nick, I might point out that back in 2016, guess who was considered to have no chance of getting elected? Trump.
Yeah.
And they were saying that all the way up to the eve of the election, where they were saying, all the commentators saying, "Oh, Hillary has a 99% chance of being elected," and that was the conventional wisdom. Now, mind you, my retort to that has always been, if conventional wisdom were as reliable or anywhere near reliable, accurate, or consistent, Hillary Clinton would have been president. But it's not. Conventional wisdom is often wrong.
Yeah, and you cannot underestimate the dumbing down of Americans. And so the thing is, you can't underestimate that. So what happens is, with this big middle school mentality and these slogans that attracts people like crazy, and half the population falls for it. That's why P.T. Barnum became one of the wealthiest people in the world, because he goes, well, you can't fool all the people all the time, but you can fool some of the people some of the time. And so
you have a profit.
What?
That makes a profit.
Yeah, that's the reason when Trump got elected, I said, oh, the circus is coming to town. Well, Vivek Ramaswamy is just another form of a circus. He will not get the nomination. That's for sure. And the top candidate, which I agree with you, Sasha, is Nikki Haley. She may not get the nomination. If she did, she would win the election because she would take the Democrat.
She might conceivably be if Donald Trump got the nomination, he might conceivably tap her to be the VP.
Yeah, but
I don't think she would agree to become his VP because they have a rocky relationship, and she was nearly opposing him when he was president.
No, he'd probably pick Vivek Ramaswamy to be his vice president.
What, assassination insurance?
But
don't assassinate me, otherwise Ramaswamy will become president.
Jonathan,
I don't think that'll work.
Do you remember a time when Bush Sr. was the president? And there was a comedian, he passed away, unfortunately, forgot his name. His one of his jokes was that I always every day I have a toast for George Bush Senior. Why you drink everything for his health? He says because he is saving us from Dunk whale.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's
Well,
why we want him to be alive.
but Trump would probably pick Vivek because he looks for obsequious people that will bend to his every wish and desire. And Pence was a good foil for a long time. And then Pence finally actually did really well in the debate, but unfortunately, his personality just got no push at all. And so the only one who actually got pushed was Nikki Haley on the high information voters. They all push Nikki Haley, but unfortunately, that's not who votes.
Actually,
Unfortunately,
Pence also could be a formidable opposition for Biden, but
Who?
he's not going to win nomination. I agree with you on that. But he could fight Biden actually quite handily. But he's not going to win the
Yeah.
nomination.
But it will make a big difference in what goes on in Ukraine, and unfortunately makes a difference with the rest of our lives because we have to live with the decisions of the low information voters. So who knows who's going to end up occupying the office, because that person does become commander in chief of the United States, and that's a really very powerful position to be in. Yeah.
Okay, well said, Nick. And with that, we are at the end of our program for today. Thank you so much for this program, and looking forward to see you next Tuesday, same place, same time. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.
Bye bye.